Hey guys, happy summer. Hopefully you guys are enjoying a very, very nice, relaxing day today. I'm happy that you're tuning into our HAPA Talkback today. If you have any questions for our guest, please go on ahead and you can put them in the comments. We will read them and we'll get them answered. Today, I'm excited to introduce our guest. He is a Canadian guitarist who is one of the top guitarists under 30 and is a performer just like you guys. And I'm excited to have him here today. His name is Calum Graham.
Hello, everyone. How you guys doing?
Calum, to kind of start us off, you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, just a little bit about you.
Sure. I'm a 28-year-old Canadian musician. I've been playing, I guess, for about 13, 14 years. I started playing the guitar when I was 13, learned from my dad he actually wanted to quit smoking. So he bought a guitar and wanted to keep his hands busy. So he bought a guitar and kind of showed me some classic rock tunes. And then eventually I just didn't put the guitar down and kept continuing through studying and learning. And now I'm composing my own music and able to do it as a career. So feel very fortunate and lucky to do that this day and age.
Nice. You mentioned that your dad was smoking and he kind of took up the guitar, and you said that he taught you a song, or like?
Yeah, a number of tunes. I guess some old Led Zeppelin, and there's an Aerosmith tune in there. I think one of my first ones was a Fleetwood Mac tune, the Never Going Back Again. Oh, I'm in the wrong tuning bin. But kind of getting that finger picking down. It was a little bit tricky at first. I kind of started with the pick and was playing more electric guitar. Mm-hmm. And I discovered this Canadian musician, Don Ross.
Oh, yeah, Don.
Yeah, and it sounded like there were 3 guitars playing at once. And I just thought, wow, that's incredible. One guitar is making all that sound. And so I said, never mind the electric guitar. I want to learn how to do that. So that kind of began my acoustic guitar journey, I guess you could say.
That's awesome. Actually, I kind of jumping around a little bit, but you mentioned Don Ross and that you actually saw him, but now you're doing YouTube videos with him.
Yeah, I guess 5 or 6 years ago, we did an album together and recorded in Toronto at Metalwork Studios. And it's like a duet album, some of my songs, some of his. And we did an arrangement of Outkast's Hey Ya, and that was a lot of fun. Had the talk box going on the electric guitar and all that. But yeah, pretty cool from, him being my hero to being my duet musical partner, and feel really fortunate to have his support and be working with him. And he was kind of my introduction to touring over in Europe. Actually, that's been kind of an annual trip. I'll go there at least once a year and tour. And for some reason, the guitar is just a really big thing in Germany. People just love it, from metal to acoustic guitar to classical. Yeah, they just seem to have this infatuation with the acoustic guitar over there. So I'm over there quite a bit. That's
cool. I didn't know that. It's just like something that you don't really think about, like when you go to a different country, like what is their things that they like to listen to, or like what's really infatuating about like certain things. So
yeah, they definitely like their heavy metal music, like Rammstein.
Classic Rammstein.
But they also, love the nice kind of easy listening acoustic guitar too. So yeah, it's really cool. Very, very open-minded, audience over there. It's always a pleasure being there.
That's awesome. Let's see. So Don was an inspiration for you, and then you got to meet him. What other inspirations? Also, like your dad too. Both of them were inspirations. What other inspiring people or just inspirations in general kind of got to where you are today?
After I discovered Don Ross's music, I kind of went, followed that. Oh, maybe I should.
You're good.
Getting cut off. After that, I discovered an online label called Candy Rat Records, which is in Milwaukee, in Menominee Falls, and they've been kind of this acoustic kind of hub where they feature all these guitarists from all over the world, primarily focused on solo instrumental acoustic guitar. Mm-hmm. And may have heard of Andy McKee. He had, you know, his tune "Drifting" blew up to I don't know how many millions of views, but
Right.
that kind of put Candy Rat on the map, and so everybody had kind of a trickle down success, I guess you could say, because of him. And it's called Candy Rat, but I joke that it should be called Andy Rat because
Just right after Andy McKee.
yeah, exactly. I mean, without him, there would be no label, really. I mean, hard to say if it would have grown to be a thing. It was kind of perfect timing when he released that video that YouTube had the homepage.
Mm-hmm.
So
oh,
he was
a
able to
long time ago.
yeah, exactly. So he was able to get a lot more exposure, but it was a great tune, and it was kind of a perfect moment because that kind of, you know, percussive tapping and playing over the neck of the guitar hadn't been done too much before that. You know, that was a tune inspired by Preston Reed and some other people who didn't really get so much of a spotlight in their career as much. So it's really great that Andy did, and he pays a homage to, you know, all the other guys that inspired him. It's really that way.
It's actually funny that you mentioned him too, because I remember when I was like, you know, in high school, and that was like years ago, but like I just remember finding that video specifically, the drifting video, and I was just like mind blown. I was like, what is this? That's something that you just don't see. And then it led me to Antoine Dufour and just a ton of other Candy Rat artists. And then a few years later, like your videos started popping up, and just constantly just getting better and better. It's just amazing stuff that you guys do. So how did you specifically get into Candy Rat? Like, did you just go and just ask, or did you have to like play something for them, or like who were you talking to really get that gig going for you?
Don Ross was kind of my foot in the door there, because he was actually the reason why the label started in the beginning. And so he's, you know, I guess he had like a couple albums out by then. And so when we did this album and released it, you know, he thought, you know, do you have any idea, you know, where you'd like to pitch it to for a label or anything? And I thought, I have no idea. And so he suggested, you know, to go through Candy Rat with his connection through there. So that's kind of initially, you know, how I made it over to Candy Rat. And then from there, I did a solo follow-up album, Phoenix Rising, is that fall, that same year. And then that's where I guess a couple of my tunes kind of hit a few million views there. So I guess, yeah, it had some really great exposure, I guess, as a, you know, result of Andy Rat. Luckily. But yeah, that was really it, was when I found Don Ross, then I discovered Andy McKee and Antoine Dufour, like you said, and so many great guitarists, and that became my high school soundtrack. I literally just didn't care about anything else but music at that time, and maybe skateboarding or longboarding. But, that was it. I didn't even focus so much on like academics or friends anymore. Just music became like this tunnel vision. And I discovered all these guys on Candy Rat, including Michael Hedges, who was on the Windham Hill label years ago. And he was kind of a pioneer, you know, of this whole style, kind of the Jimi Hendrix of the acoustic guitar, you could say. And discovering his music was a big revelation for me in terms of not only, you know, there's so many guitarists that can play amazing. You know, it's really a dime a dozen, but to find somebody who you can really, you know, hear themselves, you know, expressing something. Yeah, I guess that's really it, is expressing versus trying to impress. That's what really touched me about Michael's music, is it really seemed, you know, from the heart, and like he was telling his story. So I think the storytelling aspect of his songwriting really captivated me, and so that also inspired my music from there. And so I wrote this tune as a dedication to his 1984 album Aerial Boundaries, the title track. Once I heard that, it was like a epiphany moment. I just thought, you know, this is exactly what I want to be doing. So yeah, remains a huge inspiration to me today. And I'm starting to sing a little bit too, and he was doing that as well, and worked with a great musician from the San Francisco Bay Area, Michael Manring. So I've had the lucky chance to work with him on a couple tunes, and it's really cool just to work with him and you know, get a a little glimpse of, you know, Michael Hedges, and they played together and toured, and he's definitely become one of my biggest influences, both Michael Manring and Michael Hedges, after discovering Don Ross. So I feel really lucky to be in good company with those guys.
That's really neat, because you see these people, and the story of Michael Hedges, how how he just came to be, and it's very tragic of what happened. And but his music lives on, and all these artists really noticed that and really took into that and just really made something their own. And you, like you said just a while ago, about a minute ago, you said that you had a song that was inspired by Michael Hedges, and I remember it to this day. And you correct me if I'm wrong, though. It's in the Nomad video. You title a quote by Michael Hedges saying, "Sound is nothing but." You might have to correct me on that.
Heaven is all around, translated to sound.
Heaven is all around, translated into sound, and you captivated that in your Nomad song.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a couple questions actually coming in for you before we continue talking about Michael Hedges and whatnot. We have a question from Alex Green. Do you play any other instruments?
Hey, Alex, I do play other instruments. I play the acoustic guitar and a baritone guitar and a harp guitar, all guitars, of course. But I haven't really experimented too much with other instruments. I like to try and compose on other instruments because I'm totally out of my comfort zone, and sometimes that's where the magic happens. So I like to just challenge myself where I have no idea what I'm doing and try and find something on that. Because when you play an instrument and you go to pick it up, your hands usually go to something that you know already, right? So when you go to a new instrument, you have no reference point. So that's where a lot of the magic happens for me. And sometimes to do that, I'll stay on the guitar, but I'll go into a new tuning. So it's almost like having a new instrument there, like with a cello tuned differently. So it's a different approach as well with that. But in terms of other instruments, I have been singing a little bit, so been working on that instrument, and I really want to get a cello, but it takes up a lot of room, and I don't have a lot of room in my studio. So I've got this little EBow that kind of makes the same sound. But yeah, I never really could learn to play piano, but besides I grow my fingernails too, so it's a little bit hard to get that going with nails on the right hand. But no, that's pretty much it. Just bass guitar, harp guitar, baritone guitar, which is tuned a little bit lower. It's almost like in between an acoustic guitar and a bass. So you get a really low kind of resonant note on the low string. It's kind of like be tuned down here maybe. And so yeah, pretty much all guitars and singing. Those are my instruments.
And then Alex also asked you too, who is your favorite guitarist?
Ooh, that's a tough question. There's so many, and so many different styles too. Like I just mentioned, a lot of the guitars that inspired me in this finger picking genre, but outside of that, I listen to literally everything. I would say Paco de Lucia, or Lucia, I guess as you would pronounce it. Great Spanish flamenco guitarist who is one of the most musical guitarists I've ever heard, and he's just flawless and incredible. And so much texture in that music and rhythm that I love. Every time you hear it, you hear something new in that. I love music like that. And so probably he'd be one of my favorite flamenco guitarists. And then, as I mentioned, Michael Hedges, Andy McKee, Don Ross, Antoine for acoustic guitarists. And Stephen Bennett also is a great harp guitarist. And outside of that, maybe for like blues rock, I mean, that's a whole other thing. It's really, really hard to pick one. I think I have to pick one for each category, really. But maybe for the electric guitar, I might say Jeff Beck. He's just has a really unique sound, and as soon as you hear a solo or a couple notes from him, it's Jeff Beck. And I love that identity that can be created with sound. Like when you hear Elton John sing, you know right away it's him, or so many other singers you could say the same thing about. And so I think anyone who's found kind of their artistic identity or their artistic fingerprint, you could say, I'm really inspired by that, and also inspired by musicians who are not guitarists, namely one, Imogen Heap. She's just so brilliant. I love what she's doing. So, I mean, really my influences are, even though I play the guitar, my influences are from, you know, just all genres of music, really. So I try to just stay as open-minded as I can and really listen to everything. There's something to learn from every genre of music, really.
That's so true. You always can just like pick something, just one, that just one little detail. You always just want to like pick it and then put it into your compositions, no matter what it is. And so that's just really cool. Thank you for that. Thank you, Alex, for those two questions.
Good question, Alex.
Going back to Michael Hedges, you mentioned that he always portrayed a story in his works. Also like incorporating singing to it, just, you know, encompassing just a story. And then going back to the Nomad too, you briefly mentioned Michael Hedges, and then you explain a story just through your music. What inspired you to compose that song? And you even too, I keep following like with the videos too. You like to have a music video in like different areas. So like there was one with where you were at with the waterfall, and you know, you could just close your eyes and you could just picture all of that. So you want to talk a little bit about the Nomad and just the story?
Sure. Yeah, actually the main kind of inspiration for the song came, as I mentioned, from Michael's 1984 album with the title track Aerial Boundaries. And it kind of started with this just this kind of hammer-on pull-off thing, and just the syncopation of it and everything was really interesting to me. And I kind of started from that. I kind of just took that idea, or the waka waka style, as he says, the hammer-on pull-off idea, and kind of I just kept that as kind of one layer. And one thing I guess I really tend to be inspired by is a lot of minimalism music, like Steve Reich and
Interesting.
Philip Glass as well. I really love the idea of one constant, but everything else changing around it. And so in this case, it's this part that's the constant. So pretty basic part, but there's one layer. And so if you think of songwriting like building a cake, I guess there's the bottom layer. Now we got to add some icing to it. So the melody here, most of my ideas I come up with trying to sing, actually. Maybe I'll kind of record this and just sing some ideas over it. And so I did just that. I just dun 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 dun, and then I just found that on the guitar. So now with that, you can hear sort of a conversation happening, right? There's like a little bit of a musical dialogue where it's asking a question. It's like, what time is lunch? It's at 12:34. So it's like an interesting kind of conversation, because you're leaving with some suspense on the first note, right? It's like you're
that leading tone,
but you wouldn't end the song there, right? So it needs to resolve. So you're setting up the question, and then it comes in, and it resolves back to the one. So that's something that I learned in classical music, of kind of this conversation happening. And you can hear that with so many musical or classical composers, and especially on some of the inside voices. Like it's not always in the bass or the melody maybe, but sometimes in the middle you'll have these really unique voices happening. And I love that idea of a musical conversation happening with everything. So that's kind of what I'm trying to create here, is like with these 6 strings, I'm trying to orchestrate or think of the guitar like a little orchestra, really. So I've got the melody, up here, and the bass, and then everything in between I can kind of use for like the middle voices or rhythm. And so that's kind of my approach, is just thinking of huge orchestra, how can I orchestrate what I'm doing to make it sound like there are almost multiple instruments playing?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my approach. And then in the rest of the song, it kind of, I guess I listened to a lot of soundtracks as well. And actually, when I was composing this song, now that I think of it, I was in the studio in Laguna Beach, California, and this guy had brought me down to work on an IMAX documentary on humpback whales, which was totally awesome.
Nice.
And totally random. and so we were in the studio creating all these ideas to come up with and show to the producers, and hopefully, you know, we would get something that worked and then move on. But a lot of the time, I think 90% of everything that we wrote just kind of went by the wayside. And so this idea that I had for this song was one that I was really excited about. And I thought, man, they're going to love this. It's so cool. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't like it so much. So it happens. And so I thought, okay, they'll just kind of save that for later, record it at least and come back to it. And I had this just kind of theme idea that I was playing around with. And I guess it took me like maybe a year to a year and a half to finish the song, because I had the initial idea and then there was the long pause of nothing. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll do something with that. And so the song is really working with themes, and the main theme, or riff, I guess you could say, in there, and it's going, oh, and it's really kind of boring with those, you know, just played on those two strings. Mm-hmm. But one thing you can do with using open strings is get a really open sound by notes ringing on top of each other. So I have, instead of going on 2 strings, I'm doing on 4 strings. So you're just spreading out the sound to open it up and get a nice resonant sound here. So I had this idea forever, and I started developing it, changing the syncopation of it now. And then I went 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm subdividing the beat. Mm-hmm. It's still in 4, but I'm thinking of it like 2 bars of 3 and then 1 bar of 2. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, switch. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But you could still count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so that's kind of, you know, it's still using I'm not changing the time signature, I'm just changing how you're accenting it or syncopating it. Mm-hmm. And then when I get to this part here, there's almost, again, going back to classical music. If you go to, is it the Bourrée in E minor? Bourrée, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Right? So you've got the bass going down and the melody going up. So this is called contrapuntal motion. And so I use that in the song here. When I get to the melody note, it's going actually just like the Bourrée there. Mm-hmm. But don't tell Bach that I stole that.
Secret safe with us.
And then the bass is really going down from E to D to C. So look what happens when you combine the two in opposing motion. It's really nice. And you can do this, you know, where the bass and melody go up together or opposite. There's many different types of motion, but this one, I like that kind of contrast of one going up and the other going down. And then kind of came across this tagline. And this is kind of all I had for the idea. So I thought, okay, I kind of stopped at this point and thought, yeah, I don't really know where to take it. And then again, going back to that minimalist idea of one thing kind of being constant and everything else changing, mm-hmm. I was playing with this kind of bass line here. So then I thought, okay, there's one layer. What could I do on top of that? Well, it's pretty hard because I've got both hands that are focused on something. So what if I were to play that bass line with my right hand, and then that frees up my left hand to do maybe some more of that hammer-on pull-offs? So I learned to do it this way. Very sloppily played. I brought in my left hand, and again, I was just kind of singing when I came up with this idea. I was thinking like, dun, 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 and of course, I probably recorded that, and then I tend to sing over top of that to find my other idea. So the next part was this. So when you combine the two of them together, it's kind of like rubbing your tummy and patting your head. Learning to do this took a little while, but here it is together. So it's really cool when you get the two layers happening.
Yeah.
So that took a while to get all the fine moving parts in that, but I think for me, an idea always starts with a melody, and then I'm trying to think of how to, tell a story with continuing that melody and with everything else that is combined with it, the harmony and rhythm. And then I'm just trying to build, like a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, you're kind of, maybe you start off your song here, and then you kind of build in, intensity and everything, and then it kind of comes back down. But it's always different. Sometimes maybe you start here and you're kind of going back down. It's always different. But this one's kind of really starting from like a whisper, quiet, mellow thing, and then building throughout, and then it kind of comes back down at the end.
And
so that's oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry for interrupting you. Go on ahead.
No, not at all.
Oh, I was going to say, if to our students, if you've never heard of Aerial Boundaries by Michael Hedges, this is exactly kind of like what it is, and you just said it with the Nomad, where it just like started off here. And I know that my camera's opposite, but it just kind of starts like a whisper and builds up, and then it goes back down, just like Aerial Boundaries. And blows your mind. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's really important to think about shape when you're composing, and think about color. So you're almost thinking like a visual artist in a way. So if I've been painting this E minor kind of sound here, you want to have something that contrasts that. So the next part that I had coming in after that was and then it's back to. So that just shows at a micro level in the song how you're taking from here, and then just kind of amping it up a little bit, and then you kind of come back down. So those peaks and valleys are really important in composing, and I think it's really important to also create contrast and think about when you have an idea, okay, how can I maybe go to something else, another section maybe, that when I come back to this idea, it seems fresh again, because if you just continue it, there tends to be, you can get into the territory of being monotonous a little bit. So you got to think about maybe what other notes in the scale I haven't used, and then think about using those, and adding a new color, coming back. So back to the idea of themes, I started with this and built the whole song kind of around this at the center point. And so then I thought, okay, I've got this idea. How do I, maybe that's about 5 intensity. It's not, nothing too crazy.
Right.
But I thought, okay, if this is kind of the center point, how can I even go down from there? So when I created this note, I just found it here, and then I found the intro. So then the intro is kind of building up into it, right? And then once you get this part going, now you're here. So where do we go from there? If we were to go back down, it's gonna kind of lose the intensity. So from here, that's where I went into this section here with the contrapuntal motion. And then I did a nuance, a little variation. Building. So again, it's building to something else. It's taking us somewhere, and then that's where the bass line is introduced.
Mhm.
So it's I think the biggest thing for me in composing that song was thinking of this idea of themes and contrast and creating different colors that kind of keep you on your toes when you're listening to it. And when it came to making the videos, I'm a big nature nut, and I'm always outside and find a lot of my inspiration actually just in nature, and seeing like different flowers and the way that a tree can be from an acorn to a full grown beautiful tree. It's I just find so much inspiration in that. And so I'll take my guitar outside and just kind of compose, and kind of take all of that in. And so I thought when it came time to do the video, maybe it'd be good to be there instead of, this wouldn't be a bad spot for a video in front of the fireplace.
Yeah, that's what we were just thinking.
Hot. My back is kind of hot, and my guitar might go out of tune. So, but yeah. Any other questions on that tune at all?
Yeah, you answered everything about that. I think maybe one question that maybe even our viewers are thinking too is like they're hearing all these different elements from the Nomad. Can you put it all together and perform it for us? Is that possible?
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of this getting hot, I might
might turn that off a little bit.
Here we go. All right. Here's the Nomad.
My goodness, that was amazing.
Oh, I don't know about that. This is my action's pretty high on this guitar. I need to get it set up. Maybe I'll grab another one.
Wow. Thank you so much for that performance, Calum. That was, like I said, that was phenomenal.
I wish I could have done it a little more justice, but yeah, it was a little hard to play on that. I haven't played that guitar in a while.
We have another question from Alex coming in. I really want to play a guitar. Was it hard learning how to play a guitar?
Yeah, it was. I mean, initially it's pretty hard because you got to build these calluses and your fingers kind of hurt when you play, at least if you're on a steel string guitar. Nylon string, maybe not so much, but definitely on a steel string, you got to develop calluses on your finger, to be able to play. So the first part's a little bit kind of uncomfortable and hurts your hand a bit, but once you get past that, it's much easier.
Nice. Wow, I'm just still blown away. It's still it's just amazing. Kind of getting, well, before I go into that, to our guitar students, to our guitar majors and our band majors, everything that Calum has been saying about how he created the Nomad, that's stuff that you should really think about if you're trying to compose, or if you're trying to think like, hey, how do I want to get this theme? How do I want to express some different colors? And to those that are even going into music, when you're taking like music theory or music history, these elements that he used in the Nomad, you will be experiencing and you will be learning about. So it's music is historical, and you always go back to those ideas. Has there been any difficult days as a musician, even like the past like few months, with everything going online? Has that been difficult, or has there been anything, just within the past few years that just were a little bit troublesome?
Yeah, definitely the last few months, I guess, since being in lockdown has been a little bit of a tumultuous time. I would be over in Europe right now, I guess, touring, and that kind of fell through for the time being. So it's a bit of a change of gears just to figure out what I'm going to do in the meantime, now that I won't be touring anytime soon. So initially there was a bit of like anxiety and depression and despair, but then I thought, okay, how can I take this as an opportunity to grow and maybe, get through some things on my to-do list that I've been procrastinating. So I've taken this as a good time to write, also doing more teaching now, more video tutorials, and creating tablatures and that sort of thing. And just starting to work on new music. And for the concerts, I thought of doing more online concerts and just like a Facebook, Instagram live, just a way of, connecting people. I think it's a really difficult time for a lot of people, and also a really good time for music. I think you can really see the importance of music and art in these times. And so it's been a good challenge for me just to say, okay, how can I still stay creative? How can I still, look at earning during this time to stay afloat? And here in Canada, we've been really lucky. Our government doesn't have it all together, but in the arts sector, it definitely has that part together. And so I've, done an online concert where they like paid for that, and I've been very fortunate that way. And super lucky to the online community who's been very supportive during this time. But yeah, definitely there are challenging moments, and I think that you're going to get that in any line of work that you do. And
Exactly.
I think the biggest thing is that adversity really makes you stronger when you're in that growth stage, and when you're up against when you don't have all the answers and maybe more questions than answers. It can be kind of an unnerving and uncertain time a little bit, but luckily, the guitar has always kind of kept me grounded in that way, that no matter what's happening in the world, I can just kind of close my eyes and kind of get lost in the music. So I'm really lucky to this guitar here for that. But yeah, definitely there's been a lot of challenge and adversity, and days where you just think, is this worth it, all the time that I'm putting into it and for the outcome? But ultimately, when I go back to doing what I love. There's nothing more satisfying for me than playing the guitar and expressing myself in music and sharing that with people. So yeah, I'm lucky to have this definitely to help me through those times. Music also really, it's like a form of therapy as well, and there's like, yeah, so much more we could talk about with that. But for me, music has kind of been my, I guess, yeah, therapy and way of healing and way of connecting and, again, way of expressing myself even better than I can in the English language sometimes. So yeah, very, very lucky for that.
Well, people also say that, music is a language, and that's just how you can really express yourself. And, when there are times, kind of like you said, no matter what profession you're in or like where you're going, there's always going to be those tough times. But the cool thing about art and music is it's always there. And you could always go to it. And, you can take those ideas, you can take what's going on, and you can express it in your own way. Like I do, like, with this lockdown, there's been days where it's been really good, like, having fresh ideas, but then there's been days where it's just like a slump. And but the piano is always there, and I have a piano right next to me, and so I can always go to that, and I could just like express that. So that's really cool that you mentioned that.
And I think it's good to also, even maybe when you are like feeling stuck, it's good to sometimes express that in music and, maybe just play around because you'll come up with new ideas. But sometimes it's also good to take a little break and come back to it fresh. So again, like I mentioned, being a nature nut, I like to kind of get outside. That's kind of my reset button for my brain. If I get too stressed out or I'm too much in my head, that's always good for me to just kind of come back to ground zero. And it's a bit, like music's kind of a meditation as well in that way too. And I think just allowing yourself to get into that flow state is the most important thing, whether you're composing or creating, anything really. I think that's definitely where you want to, I guess, focus. If you can be in that state of flow, then that's where kind of the inspiration process, continues. You're really just in songwriting, you're just having the confidence to go from one note to the next, right? Or improvising as well. You're just going one note to another one. So when you break it down to it, it's really simple, but it's really complex at the same time. So
yeah, man.
So there's this kind of like zero, laser focus that I go in on a song, and then I try and like go completely back, like maybe a painter would do, like with a really fine brush, and then you step way back from it and say, how's it look? So I think the same thing with music too. You really got to focus in, but then also take a step back and
kind of like see the broader picture and like the story.
Exactly. And when we're creating or composing or playing, we're in the shoes of the performer, but it's also super helpful to take the stance of the audience member. So I try and record all of my ideas and listen to them after without, my guitar in my hands, because you listen to things differently too. So I think having those two to kind of go, back and forth from is really important. And because the process of writing music is a giant mess, really. So I think it's kind of like you get an idea and that's your spark, and then it's just you work on it as hard as you can until you kind of hit a wall, and then that's where you kind of stop and take a breath and come back to it fresh. And maybe that's where I would go to another instrument and play around with something and then figure out how to incorporate that into what I'm doing. But you always want to have that, just your mind is wide open to think of all the possibilities. Because it can be a little bit daunting to kind of go in the wild in a path that's never been trailblazed before as a musician. But again, as I mentioned, just encourage everybody to get out of their comfort zone as much as they can, because it's a scary place to be, but it's really where the magic happens, where we just kind of let go and say, all right, just gonna go with the moment and see what happens.
And honestly, like 9 times out of 10, like going out of that comfort zone, you're going to be surprised of what you can do with that. It's just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
We're going to almost kind of, sorry for interrupting. Were you about to?
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay. We're gonna kind of almost be wrapping up here. We're running pretty close to an hour. You mentioned that one of the ways to kind of balance yourself, one thing, like if you're feeling down, or you like to do tutorial videos, and that's what you do. You do these free tutorial videos that people can learn some of your songs. Is there also another reason why you decided to open it up to the public? Because most people don't do that. They actually say they put it behind a paywall and they're like, hey, like, in order to get the tabs, like, here's this. But also, like, have you received testimonials of people learning your songs from that?
Yeah, that's been, I guess, really great. And well, I guess to your question, to answer that first, the reason why I did was, I believe music should be free, at least the educational part of it.
Right.
And I know there was Antoine Dufour actually put out a number of guitar tutorials and kind of little videos with his techniques, kind of explaining what was happening, because there weren't a lot of videos actually out kind of explaining this fingerpicking style. And so he did kind of break it down, and that was invaluable to me. And so again, as I mentioned, composing and putting yourself in the shoes of the listener, I did the same thing when, after I'd written a couple albums, and I thought, okay, for anyone wanting to learn more about this style, I'm sure that might be interesting to them. So I put up a number of free tutorials, and really gained some diehard fans that way. And it's amazing. I'm always blown away when anybody takes the time and effort to learn one of my songs. And now, actually, because of the pandemic, many people have been, said they enjoy the tutorials, but they'd be happy to pay for them. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll, try charging for that, and just give a little teaser, or, every second or third video I'll make free or something.
Right.
So, and that's been going really well, to replace ticket sales at shows. Now it's, the video tutorial aspect. So
yeah,
there's but again, it goes back to just, trying to help people as much as I can. I love to give a hand to people trying to figure out all of this and help break it down a little bit so it doesn't seem, so intimidating.
Yeah. And that's just really, that just builds more musicians too. And it's when someone sees it, or when someone's just thinking, it's hey, I don't know what I want to try, I don't know what I want to do, and then they stumble on how to finger pick, how to do all these different kinds of methods, and then when someone tries it, then there's going to be that light bulb in the head saying hey, I can actually create something with this. Mm-hmm. And then they can also build upon that and then compose, and then here we are.
Yeah, I think when you break it down like that, people can actually see oh, that's actually, when you break it into steps, it's doable. When you hear the whole thing, it's wow, I could never do that. When I listen to Michael Hedges play Aerial Boundaries, it's yeah, wow, if I ever get to even come close to that in my lifetime, I'll be happy.
Right.
Yeah, but breaking it down to steps, that's what it's all about, keeping it simple. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of helping people in that way, and hopefully people your students have found this to be helpful.
Mm-hmm. They definitely have.
Yeah, I think just breaking it down, I don't know if you have the show in the States. I'm pretty sure you might. It's called How It's Made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, we have that.
I was always fascinated with that show, and so almost when I came to do the tutorials, I thought of it's a How It's Played kind of episode.
That's cool.
So so I thought of it kind of a, even interesting for someone just to kind of watch and see the process of how a song is composed, and I know one of the tunes you mentioned as well that you enjoy, mine is the 1234 tune.
Yeah, I like that one. When I'm walking, I hear it in my head. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe just kind of break down that and the simplicity of how that was composed, really, because it was super simple, and anybody could do this on almost any instrument. When I came to write this song 1234, I started with this bass line going. And I started to sing. Dun, 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 dun. So then I just figured out, how do I play what I'm singing? together. And that's an easy place to start. If you guys can even just come up with a bass line that you like, maybe just sing up, something on top of that, and then try and figure out what you were playing there, and then combine them together. Now, that took a little while to get the parts with those changes in there. So I used the program called Guitar Pro, or I just, would write it out on the sheet music to see when the melody and bass kind of go at the same time. And then I kind of had to learn to play my own song. So I had this idea in my head, and then just had to kind of record it and then listen back and then see how to do everything simultaneously. So the end result of that was this here. And the new ones. You can tell there's kind of a musical dialogue happening, like a conversation in there as well, right? So that's really what I'm thinking about, that call and answer aspect, contrast, and really just coming up with a story.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my creation process, really, when you break it down. And just thinking of creating these layers. So maybe you come up with a bass line first, maybe you come up with a melody, and then try out different bass notes to play over that. But that can always be a good way to kind of spark inspiration. Just, try something. And if you have a loop pedal, you could also do it. Or sometimes I'll just record an idea, loop it on my phone, and then sing over top of that. But I find that I come up with my best ideas when I sing, actually, because it's something with the human voice and how melodies kind of catch in our head. I think if it's a singable melody, it's much more likely to stick in our head.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come up with an idea on the guitar, it's not always very singable. So I try and always go back to that, and I go back to simplicity, and just having a melody that tells a story. So that's kind of my starting point from there. And then, just run with it. And like I said, kind of take that macro and micro view, and just take the shoes of the audience as much as I can to see, okay, is it something that I would want to listen to eventually? That's kind of where you want to get it to that point, is if you can be happy with your own song and eventually end it, because the other trick too is you can just keep on writing a song and keep adding to it, but eventually
it's got to end.
Yeah. When have I said it all?
That's a cool creative process, because like I know I experienced like something like that, where it's like if I'm just like writing, it's like, oh, like I'm on a streak, but then like 10 minutes goes by and I'm just still playing, and it's like, well, I gotta end this sometime. So one of the last questions that I just want to kind of wrap everything up with, and this is directed towards our students, what is something, or what advice would you give to our current students, or even to, like, if you went back in time and you saw yourself back in high school or secondary school, what advice would you give? Like, just now where you are right now, what would you have liked to learn back then?
Very good question. Many things I think I would have done. When I finished high school, I was about to go into college to study music, and for this finger picking style that I play, there's only one school in the world that's teaching it, in Milwaukee, with John Stropes. And unfortunately, I didn't get the scholarship, so I didn't get to go there. But I was enrolled to go into a classical program near my hometown here in Calgary. But the day before classes, I got this gut feeling like maybe I shouldn't go. I heard some horror stories from different friends of mine that ended up not even playing music anymore after going to school. Just the way that the whole, academic route was shaped, I guess it kind of didn't really encourage creativity so much. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm already starting to compose and get some interest for booking. So maybe I'll continue what I'm doing while studying with a classical guitar professor, which I would at the university. So that was my choice to do that, and I'm glad I did that. Now, I didn't end up with a degree or anything after that, but now I'm getting, you know, all these different opportunities just based on putting my music out on YouTube and, you know, Spotify and my website, and like I got that opportunity to score that humpback whale documentary just from YouTube. So it's not everything to have a degree anymore, really. I think your credibility is in your songs, or your playing, or whatever you do. And so I thought, okay, if I just focus on that and I be the best that I can be, and if I'm disciplined every day, then I might be able to make a career out of this. And so I guess if I were to go back, I don't think I necessarily would have went to school. I'm glad I kind of was able to study privately and work on my own. But maybe I would have also taken online lessons from, you know, some people who inspired me. So and that's available now. You know, there's, with the beauty of the internet, we can be connected that way. And there's things like Masterclass, you know, which I've been learning from as well, which is super helpful. So I think, yeah, if I were to go back, I would be a sponge even more and absorb a lot more, maybe outside of my comfort zone of listening. So maybe I would study a little bit of Latin jazz, and maybe a little bit of fusion, and, you know, or country finger picking, and learn all of these different skills that, you know, maybe I wouldn't use primarily, but I can, you know, you build all of these techniques and tools in kind of your toolkit, so that when you go to write songs, you have them at your disposal. So I think I maybe just would have, you know, opened up my ears a little bit more to try things that were outside of my comfort zone and outside of my, you know, comfort of listening style or whatever.
Yeah.
And just learn from as many people as you can, no matter if it's on the same instrument that you're playing. You know, there's something to learn from everyone. And so I think just I would have maybe not had the blinders on so much at that time, and just been a little bit more open-minded. And yeah, maybe that's the advice I would give my younger self.
Cool. Well, Calum, thank you so much for being with us today. And I've learned a lot just from you. And it's just really great to finally like hear how your process is, and just the advice that you would give, not only to like students, but even to like people who want to get into what you're doing. So I thank you for that. Like, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Is there any?
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Is there anything that you want to plug before we kind of wrap up? Anything that you're doing today, or in society, or like what's going on in your life today that we should know about, or anything that you want to plug in?
I've got an online concert coming up on 10 days from now, June 27th at what time is it for you?
So right now it's 3:10 Central Time.
Central Time. So it would be, let's see, 9 o'clock. Yeah, 9 o'clock Central on Saturday, June 27th. I have an online concert and fundraiser that I'm doing for the Homeless Society on the west coast of Canada. And they're doing like a donor matching challenge up to $100,000, I think. So
Nice.
looking forward to that. So that'll be in 10 days. And I guess, yeah, if people want to check out my music, I have a YouTube channel, Calum Graham Music, which is also my Instagram and Facebook tag as well. And my website's calumgraham.com. I've got free tutorials there, and a bunch of tablatures and lessons and music on Spotify, Apple Music, and all that. So you can check it out. And if you have any questions, if any of your students want to reach out at all, my email is just my name, calum@calumgraham.com. So feel free to drop me a line.
For sure. Real quick though, that concert that's coming up in 10 days, where can we find that? Like,
that'll be on the, I guess the link will be on my website at calumgraham.com/shows. So if you click on the shows tab, that's like the one show that I have for this year coming up.
Cool.
So
thank you for that. Again, Calum, thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you to our audience for chiming in, and thank you for your questions. Again, if you want to check out more of Calum's stuff, you can visit calumgraham.com. Check out his YouTube channel, his Instagram, Facebook, He's got it all. He's got it all. Again, thank you very much for joining us, and everybody enjoy your summer.
Yeah, enjoy, guys.